So let me first start talking about the challenge that every developer has in every organization. It's about velocity, it's about speed. And there's two things that every developer wants to do. The first, if we're really honest, is we want to get code to production quickly. There's nothing more infuriating than watching your baby stay held up by someone somewhere before it actually gets pushed out live. The second thing, though, is building high-performing code. There's this question of what is code quality? Is it just measured in bugs, or is it measured in the interactions that you typically have with your end users? One of the things that organizations typically turn to is a CDN. And the benefits of a CDN is they help deliver the mobile experiences. They help address the front-end challenges that no matter, frankly, what you do on your back-end code, you're not going to deliver experiences, particularly in the mobile world, whether it's the device or the connection that your end users are accessing today. But when you introduce CDN, your typical DevOps lifecycle becomes more complex for many. This virtuous circle is something that everyone in the room knows, for those particularly that have adopted DevOps. You're building, you're coding, you're planning, you're testing, and frankly, all of it's happening concurrently. Now, many organizations start with the CDN service and they configure through the UX. Whether it's Akamai or Fastly or anyone out there, they go through the UX and they set up their CDN configuration. The second you've done that, though, if you stay there and don't move further, you've essentially created a bottleneck in your DevOps pipeline. Now, when you look at pushing code to production, you've created an incremental thing that doesn't respond typically the same way that your own infrastructure does. And that's where we've been focused. And so we've been focused on how do we build code that allows you to be faster. Just specifically faster of getting your code out to production quicker, also faster in actually having it accomplish a purpose. You know, the Telegraph, when they looked at using CDN services, it wasn't just doing it to make it faster or more scalable so you could download the PDF. Their goal was how do they increase ad delivery? And they did. By making their site faster, they get 64,000 more pounds per month as a result of just speed, more ad impressions, and the behavior that draws end users. Commerce organizations, those that are selling things online, the link between performance and conversion rates are well known. But again, how do you automate things? So I'm going to pick a few things to walk through. Many of these things are unique to Akamai, but the meta point is that no matter what CDN you're using, if you're stopping with your configuration in the UX, and you're not building the deeper API integrations, you're not automating your DevOps workflow. Just to pick a few things that we've been focused on. The first is fast fallback. So anytime you have a code base that you want to globally distribute to users in Japan, Australia, and different regions around the world, question comes of how fast can you roll back and roll forward that code base? We've heard from customers and people looking at the ability to get back to a known safe place. So specifically to push a configuration change and then get back to a known safe place within 60 seconds. So that if you push something back, you can innovate quickly knowing you can fail back quickly. Or purging of content, whether it's through a UI, an API, or through a cache tag. How do you get content off your network quickly so that, again, you can take the maximum advantage of your cloud infrastructure, minimizing whatever goes back to your origin, whether your origin's in cloud or on-prem. Security systems. So there's a great benefit of CDN until it reduces your visibility at creating sites that are protected. So how do you take data and feed it into your SIEM systems so that you have still the real-time insight that you need in order to make sure that your site's up live and protected? A few things we've been focused on is first, how do you build APIs for everything? Not just for your content handling rules, but for things like traffic management, DNS, cert provisioning, if you use a certain type of cert. Or how do you look at client signing libraries? So every developer is looking at how do they move faster. So how do you have the libraries that you can offer in the languages that you know, whether it's Java, C++, PHP, Python, Perl, Ruby, et cetera? How do you have access to these libraries so, again, that you can do more faster in the way that you expect? We always know that no one is the only part of your infrastructure. So how, if you're utilizing a varnished cache at origin, or you're using Terraform to roll out code in your network, how do you have those pieces feed, again, your CDN? So in the case of Varnish, how do I have through Varnish the ability to set my content caching rules or purge rules just simply in Varnish and have that automatically propagate to the CDN? Or in the case of Terraform, as I'm pushing out core infrastructure configurations in code, how do I also manage my CDN pushes and rollbacks to that same infrastructure? But that talks about how do you push things out, the speed of velocity. We didn't talk a little bit about the operation side of things, which is a key part of ops, is having visibility so that you know what's happening. And if I go a step further, not just visibility so you know what's happening, visibility so that you can prioritize what matters. If we're honest in this room, if I said that you have 3 different pages on your site or application or whatever, and one performed at 8 seconds, one performed at 6 seconds, one performed at 4 seconds. As developers, most of us instantly would start working on the 8-second page because that's the slowest. And it's intuitive. We take pride in our work and we want to fix things that are slow. What if there was insight you could have to actually guide you to what performance actually mattered? And mattered specifically, which is what page performance were actually impacting end user behavior that actually was guiding downstream. And in fact, in the case that many of our customers find is that, I'm making the example up, but the 6-second page, reducing it to 5 has a bigger benefit to their business than 8-second page down to 4. And again, it's finding that correlation of what matters and prioritizing what you choose to do. If we're really honest in our orgs today, we're data rich and information poor. We've got data sources from a million different places. You ask organizations what they use to prioritize their development work, and that's where things instantly start getting squishy. How do you have projects where you can have conviction, as well as that when you execute those projects, you can go back to your organization and talk about the ROI of a technical thing that you built? So often, we get fallen into the trap with monster backlogs. And the logic we have for why we need to execute our backlogs is something like, we just got to fix it. It's got to get better. Instead of, I can do this and it will help draw an extra 100,000 pounds or X amount of dollars or X amount of page views or ads impressions for the business. Next, you look at testing. Obviously, tons of organizations do testing internally, and there's tons of software tools that you can utilize or cloud service tools you can utilize. 2 common challenges in testing. Number 1, there's case studies written every holiday season about organizations that thought they could scale to a particular point, and in the end don't. And the reason is because their testing scenarios never match their actual real end user scenarios. So testing tools, by definition, ask you to configure something very unnatural. What's your 5-step sequence, 10-page sequence? What's the latency between each page, assuming that every one of your users has that same experience? If you actually look at your real end user data, you'll typically find, you'll see geo differences in how people interact in your site. Plain language, someone from Japan coming through is going to go through a different flow than perhaps someone coming from North America. Obviously, the latency between each of their pages is different. And so how do you feed in accurate testing scenarios that actually give you accurate testing capacity and load capacity? Second scenario that comes with the testing is the frequency that you can do it. Do you have the ability to continuously test by utilizing, if you're still on-prem, testing behind the firewall, or of course, if you're on the cloud, to test as you wish. But again, a tool that you can use that tests with frequency. We covered a lot today. There's a site behind me where everyone can learn more, but I hope the takeaway is simple, which is first, we don't need to talk about the benefit of CDN, of what it can do for you or your end users interacting in your site. The main point that I hope everyone walks with is that if you're utilizing whatever CDN you've picked, and you're just configured it through the UX, and you're not integrating it into your CI/CD workflows, you're introducing potential performance bottlenecks. And whether it's Akamai or whatever provider you choose, I would highly encourage everyone to look how they use the capabilities provided so that you can do more faster with higher performing sites. With that, thank you for your time.